I never say, like, sorry for my tics, because then I notice, like, people will assign blame. Even if it's not my fault, like, if I'm acting like it's my fault, other people act like it's my fault.
Season 2, Episode 1, welcome to the Tourettes podcast. Whether you have Tourette syndrome or not, this is the place to hear real-deal conversations between two people who have Tourettes, one being myself, and the other somebody else in the world. United States, Canada, Scotland, England, Australia. We cross the globe, we talk about our lives with TS and how we do it, ultimately to find intersections that surprise me and ideally surprise you too. So my name is Ben, and if you're brand new to this podcast, then, well, first, welcome. And secondly, you've got a big bank of episodes from Season 1 to enjoy, starting with Season 1, Episode 0, which is my backstory and the explanation for this podcast, why it exists, why I had lived secretly with Tourette syndrome, didn't want anybody to know about it, not even my everyday friends. Season 1 is me opening up about it with the help of people around the world. We help each other out by telling our stories and finding these really odd parallels. It's often really fun, so you can reach back to Season 1, Episode 0, or Season 2, Episode 0, which came out today, the same time as this one, just to catch you up on things that have happened since Season 1. Anyway, let's go to it. On this episode, we start amazingly strong with our first conversation. That's with Jaleesa. If you follow her on Twitter, you know her by the handle The Disability Enthusiast. And for real, she bowls a 300 on this episode. Just laying it down when it comes to neuro equality and just, like most of the episodes where we just kind of build and build and build to a great finish. No exception here. Really excited for you to hear it. Excited for all of you to take part. So let's go. What's your name and, what's the general part of the world you live in, your age bracket, just kind of how you would present yourself to listeners?
So my name is Jaleesa. I'm in California. I just turned 21.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm trying to think of what else. I don't know. My life isn't that interesting. I have Tourette's.
People always say that, and it's never true.
I mean, it's interesting, but there's not, like I don't go to school or have a job to, speak of right now. So, all of the small talk sort of things that you normally say are sort of out for me. I like Dungeons and Dragons. I guess that's interesting. Oh.
So is that something you do routinely? Like you get together with a group and you play D&D?
Yeah, about once a week, and we just had an in-person game for my birthday, which was pretty fun. We did get ourselves stuck in a pyramid with lots of bad guys above us and no way out, so that'll be fun next time we play.
Could you give us a quick primer on what Dungeons and Dragons is?
On what D&D is?
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know.
Oh gosh, this is the question that haunts my life. I always have such trouble explaining it, but I'll try. So, Dungeons and Dragons is kind of like cooperative storytelling with dice. So there's one person called the Dungeon Master or the DM that describes the world around you and all of the background characters. And you have your own character that you play with their own traits and abilities. And you sort of work together to go on adventures or solve mysteries or whatever you want to do. Except each time you want to do something that might be a little bit challenging, you roll a 20-sided dice to see if you can do it. So there's a little bit of randomness and improvisation that goes into it. So it's really fun. It's kind of like the sort of imaginary games that you would play as a kid, but a lot more sophisticated.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really like it. It's really fun.
What brought you to it? I mean, did somebody introduce this to you, or is this something you found independently and you're like, wait a minute, this is going to be great for me?
So I met my friend, excuse me, there's stuff in my throat. I met my friend at a Tourette's support group, and it was originally going to be like a Tourette's D&D game, but we lost a couple of players and got some new ones. So now it's kind of just like a group of friends, and like a couple of us have Tourette's.
Yeah.
But he got me into it, and like he also got me into this show called like Critical Role and stuff like that. So I was like immediately hooked. But so now we play like every week or so. Sometimes we'll miss a week or two just because we're busy. But we do play pretty regularly, and I love it. It's a lot of fun.
So it's multiple people in the group that you play with who have Tourette syndrome?
Well, right now it's just me and the DM. I guess you could technically include my sister, although she doesn't have a diagnosis, and it would technically be like a chronic tic disorder, but she only has one tic that she doesn't even really notice.
Right.
So I don't know, like, how connected she feels to that.
When you said it was going to be more like a Tourette's D&D game, like, what do you mean specifically? Was it going to be themed somehow, or was there some sort of Tourette tie-in?
So it was originally like me and my friend who both had Tourette's, and then a couple of other friends who both had Tourette's, and then like my sister who doesn't really. So it was like it was just a bunch of people with Tourette's getting together to play D&D, basically.
I gotcha. I didn't know if it was like the story of the game was going to be influenced by Tourette syndrome or...
It's funny. We did have a discussion before the game started about like whether like our characters would have Tourette's, and we all one by one were like, I have Tourette's in real life. I don't know if I want to have it in this fantasy game. But it would be kind of interesting to play a character with Tourette's for once, though. Then again, I have to deal with it in real life.
So dealing with it in real life. So your sister has a chronic tic disorder that may or may not overlap directly with Tourette syndrome. When were you diagnosed, and what led to that?
Oh, so I was actually diagnosed really late. I was diagnosed at 18.
Okay.
And I know I've got like a lot of like very obvious vocal tics that you're hearing right now. But it wasn't always that way. I also have a lot of physical tics, so it's very obvious. But before 18, it was pretty mild. And of course, I had like excuses for all of my tics. So like my throat clearing tic was allergies, and my toe tic was just like an itch on my foot, or like. But I would call a lot of my tics the shivers or whatever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really a big deal. But they did increase a bit at like 15 or 16. And I was having this really huge tic that like came from my shivering tic. So I sort of thought it was like the shivers, but it was getting a little weird because of how complex it was getting. But it was like a back tic where I would wiggle my back, I would shake my head, throw my hands in the air, and stomp. So that was weird.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be hurting me in any way.
Right, yeah.
And I did get some tic attacks for a little bit, but because we didn't know I had Tourette's at the time, they were misdiagnosed as psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, which I accepted at the time, and it seemed to make sense. But then, like, at 18, we don't really know why we changed. We changed around a few medications, and I was also transitioning from like high school to college.
Yeah.
I just gotten my first job and whatnot, so it could have been stress. It could have been like a medication that like flipped a switch or something, or it could have been random. But like I got a stutter one day, and it reminded me of the stutter that I used to get during the tic attacks. That I thought were the other thing that I'm not going to say because it's too long at the time. So, and then like my shoulders started shaking, And it was like on my first day of work too. And it just sort of like really, I just got more and more tics from there. And I actually reached like my most severe point within a month, I think partially because I freaked out about it a little bit because I was slowly realizing that I had no control over my body.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit stressful. And also like getting diagnosed was stressful because my doctors were trying to say that it was adult onset, even though I realized by that point that I had tics when I was younger, and they were trying to tell me that it was like psychogenic. But all of my doctors disagreed, and I couldn't get anywhere with anything. So that was also very stressful. But eventually I did go to Stanford, and it was a pretty easy and quick diagnosis considering that I've been ticking from like a very young age.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's my kind of long, complicated story.
Well, so with the diagnosis, was there any sort of new layer of advice or sort of, anything practical that the doctors told you to do with either with just how you compose your life or medication or anything like that?
But not really. With the medication, it was sort of weird because even though the doctors were saying it was psychogenic, they were giving me sort of the same medication that you would give for like anyone with Tourette's, and we were trying all of that. It didn't work, but that's what they were trying anyways. But so nothing really like changed from that, except like my doctors believed me basically, and it was sort of validating because I sort of felt like I already knew by that point. But it was good to have it on paper and to not be questioned about it anymore. Just be more sure and not think that it was like something in my head or something that I was doing to myself.
Yeah, I totally get that. Did the diagnosis also kind of give you, I guess, some sort of sense of relief or a sense of, I mean, just having that answer, right?
Yeah, it was just nice to have it like concretely, and it was like on paper in ink, and it was signed by a doctor that like knew what he was doing and all of that. That was very nice to finally get to. But it was a relief not to be going through so many doctors anymore. But I'm being questioned all the time.
Your handle on Twitter is the disability enthusiast. Are there a number of things you're managing beyond Tourette syndrome?
There's a list.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I can actually name them all off the top of my head, but I can give you the main ones.
Okay.
So the ones sort of related to Tourette's, like the neurological stuff, I also have depression and ADHD. The two main ones. I also have sensory processing disorder, SPD.
Could you describe sensory processing disorder?
Yes. That's when your senses sort of work differently, so they can either be over or undersensitive. So some of my senses are a little more intense than most people. So like sound can often sound louder, or certain sounds will hurt my ears that like other people barely even notice. But I also, and this ties into another disorder that I have, which is dyspraxia. They sort of go together. I have a low proprioceptive sense, which is a sense that tells you where your body is if you're not looking at it, if that makes any sense. Like, you don't have to look at your feet to walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so that sense is like undersensitive in me, which makes my coordination kind of crap sometimes. So yeah, there's that and the dyspraxia. And then I also have something that's not really a big deal, but has a really, really funny name. It's called exploding head syndrome. I have no idea if that's related to Tourette's or not, but
what is that?
It's way less dramatic than it sounds, which is why it's
exploding
funny to
head
me.
syndrome.
So every once in a while, as I'm going to sleep, the time around like when you get that like jerk or you think you're falling.
Yeah.
So instead of that, I hear a loud noise. That's all it is. It's called exploding head syndrome.
So it's right when you're kind of drifting into sleep and you had that sort of like bodily reaction of something that you might be thinking about, but but instead of an image or...
I'll hear like a loud crash or bang. Or whatever. It hasn't happened in a while, actually. But now that I know the name, because I've had it my whole life. It's more frightening for people, I think, when they haven't had it their whole life.
Yeah.
You know, like, what the heck is going on? But for me, it's completely normal. So now when it happens, I just sort of laugh at the name and go back to sleep.
That's interesting. So is that something that, I mean, so you said it hasn't happened in a while, but was that playing with your sleep for a while, or?
There's been times when it sort of interrupted my sleep. It hasn't happened for the past couple of months. Every once in a while, it'll happen like a few times during the night, which will get a little bit annoying, but that's about as much annoyance as it causes. And I also have insomnia. That's another thing that I've had. So I have trouble getting to sleep anyways, so it's probably not doing much. But,
is this something that has, I mean, are there any theories behind it, or is this something that's been explained, or is it?
Not the last I checked. Last I checked, they're trying to say it was like rare, and then I read something that was like, it's not as rare as we thought.
Yeah.
But most of the information is from people who have it like way more severely than I do, which you would expect because like I'm not that bothered by it, so I'm not about to like go and like do any studies about it or go to a bunch of doctors for it. So most of the information about it is like from adults who have it or who just have had it, and it gives them like a lot of anxiety and causes them not to be able to sleep.
Right, yeah.
But I don't really have it that much. So for other people, it is way more disabling. But for me, it's really not a big deal. Either way, it does have a really dramatic name for what it is.
Well, I mean, so just talking to you, you seem really in touch and informed about your diagnoses. And, you know, even though I was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome when I was a kid, I feel like I still just kind of have the generic, you know, everyman knowledge of it besides my own experiences and kind of, you know, weighing them against other people. But I mean, are you into advocacy, or is this like kind of a line of work that you want to go into, or?
I do. I want to do it more. It's a little bit hard because I'm so disorganized just as a person. I think me knowing about it, for one, I'm just interested in it. I think humans are weird and incredible. So
yeah.
Like,
me too.
To me, like, I don't know, weird brain stuff is fun to study. But also I think just because I wasn't diagnosed with all of this stuff for such a long time, and I had no explanation for it, and that was really frustrating. So now that I can explain all of the stuff that I do, I find that really empowering to be able to, like, put a name on it and, you know, just say, like, oh, I'm not doing this because I'm, like, just weird or lazy. I mean, am weird, but this isn't why, you know? But, you know, I'm not just doing this stuff because I want to. It's because my brain works in this way, and your brain works in that way. And people are a lot more accepting of that if I can explain myself most of the time.
And you make videos too, right?
Yeah, although I haven't made one in a while. I've had trouble with editing, but that's a long story.
What kind of stuff were you focused on with that?
I mostly did stuff about Tourette's. I didn't really set out to make a channel just about Tourette's, but it sort of happened that way because I like kept seeing really awful misconceptions that people had, or just questions that people had sometimes.
Yeah.
So I kept wanting to address those things and put some education out there. So that's how that turned out. But I do want to make videos about other subjects, maybe more related to like disability in general, or maybe not even related to disability, but just like social issues.
Yeah.
I think would be really rewarding to make too. So.
Well, outside of your videos, is it something that you talk about kind of frequently and openly with people in your life, or people who, maybe just interact with you in some way?
Oh, I mean, in a way, I sort of have no choice now just because my Tourette's is so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no way of hiding it. And so, in a certain sense, like, every time I go out, I do have to be ready to educate people, which I do enjoy doing most of the time. Mm-hmm. But if I wasn't able to educate people, I'd probably get treated a lot worse. So, but it's important to me to like have an explanation all the time. So this is sort of like what I do all the time, just because it's always there. Mm-hmm. Or even if I didn't have Tourette's, people, the first thing they ask cats during small talk is like, oh, like, are you in school or do you work or what do you do? Mm-hmm. And I'm not in school. I don't do work. So I also have to explain that, which is related to my chronic illness, which is another diagnosis that I have. So, but yeah, like even if I didn't have Tourette's, I would still have to explain like all of the other stuff that I have at some point. But
can you kind of walk us through how that goes? Because there are a lot of people who have varying levels of tics, but I think would love to talk about it more, but aren't really sure how to kind of cross that bridge.
Yeah, so I will say for me, I don't have that much social anxiety, so I don't know how to conquer that if that's something that someone out there is struggling with.
Yeah.
I can, I guess, give you my formula for a good conversation about Tourette's.
Walk us through it.
Usually when I'm out and about, I don't really bother to educate everyone just because that would get a little too exhausting. It's usually only if someone is having a massive problem with it, and more than a look. If someone is just staring, I'll look at them back, like I'll give them a look until they stop, and that's usually all it takes.
Yeah.
But usually the point I explain it is if someone is confused or maybe they're offended or something like that. They've had some sort of reaction, and I usually say, this is my script. I say, I have Tourette's syndrome. Excuse me. It's a neurological condition that makes me make movements and noises that I can't control. And then I explain whatever tic I had and say, this is part of the syndrome. I didn't mean to do that. If you're offended, please excuse me, and take it from there. And if they have any questions, I answer them as honestly as possible. But I usually just try to say something like, excuse me, I have Tourette's, and go on my way. Because if it's a stranger and I'm just out, but, usually I have stuff to do. So I can't always stop for like a long explanation of my complicated neurological disorder. And then if it's someone that I'm going to be talking with for a longer time, like say, you're out with friends and there's someone new, right? But then I make sure to, like, in the beginning of the conversation, just, like, stop and say, oh, by the way, just so you know, and so there's no confusion, I have Tourette's syndrome, so I make noises and movements that I can't control. And then I say, like, that's why I'm making these noises and making faces. And sometimes I say sort of weird sentences, and I explain that, like, if I say something funny, that they can laugh. But otherwise to just sort of, ignore it. And that is usually enough. If someone's rude to me after I've educated them, we're probably not going to be friends. So it's a really good jerk filter. So,
and I
yeah.
I love the way you're going about this because I mean it's really straight shooting and it's honesty
Yeah.
and I think that's the question a lot of people have is like how do I do this, how do I do that, and they want to figure out the way to kind of add some kind of softener to it when they deliver this kind of information so it's processed more easily by the person you're talking to. But I do think people can kind of take it, and when you're shooting as straight as you are. Well, for one, you're being really honest, and I kind of feel like, and you're a very likable person, but I feel like everybody has charisma when they're being totally honest, and I think some people just kind of worry about coming off awkward and weird, but if you just kind of shoot straight, which I'm still not good at, then I think you can deliver the message more effectively.
I'll tell you this: usually how you handle your Tourette's is how other people will handle your Tourette's, is what I've learned.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I'm not sure, I think this applies to milder people, but I've never had to explain it when I was mild because I didn't know that I had it. But I notice, when I'm out, if I seem embarrassed by one of my tics, people are going to look at me more. They're going to, start questioning. But if I never say sorry for my tics because then I notice people will assign blame, even if it's not my fault. If I'm acting like it's my fault, other people act like it's my fault. And if you handle the conversation oh no, it's totally cool, I just have this neurological thing, whatever, and act completely normal and confident about it. I know sometimes you might not feel that way, but if you project that, then suddenly it's not really that cool to suddenly be freaking out about something that no one else is freaking out about it. So you just keep your cool and act like it's no big deal, then usually other people will act like there's no big deal. Now, it's not for everyone. You can't control everyone, and people are still going to have bad reactions just because people are rude sometimes.
Yeah.
But generally, people don't like to sort of be out of sync with the people around them. So you can sort of set the mood.
Oh man, that is so great. I mean, it's so true that if you bake apology or shame into the presentation of yourself, then that's just going to be your character, and that's going to be how they perceive you, and that's true. I think with anything, but is whether you're job interviewing or whether you're just anything in your life when you're trying to kind of not even trying, but just when you're presenting yourself to other people, it's exactly. If you add a little minus sign to what you're doing, then that's totally going to get picked up. People are intuitive with that kind of thing, but I mean, just kind of command it and own it, and they're not going to have really all that much to say. It's not going to carry with them like it would otherwise. And I don't know why I'm paraphrasing you because you've already said it way better than I can.
No, it's good. And you know what? Think about this too, because most people don't know all that much about Tourette's. So, you might be the first person that they've met that they know has tics. They probably met people with tics before, if we're all being honest with ourselves and not known it. But you might be the first person that's telling them. And so, I just sort of see that as a blank slate when it appears. And that's a good place to start and set the tone on a really positive note.
Yeah. Put a good face on it.
Yeah. Unless I have misconceptions or something, at which point I'll address those politely because, the media representation has not always been great. Right. And I understand that, why they wouldn't know better. But, but I think most people are fine after you educate them. And if they're not, I don't know, you can just not deal with those people.
That's true. I mean, so, and I've said this a million times in other episodes, but I mean, just sort of the social anxiety I had in telling people at the workplace and just kind of being comfortable with it. I didn't really know how, if like all of a sudden they know me for all this time and then bam, there's a new layer to me, like, oh, he's got Tourette syndrome. I never knew. I was worried that would translate into some sort of, stigma upon me in the workplace. And that's just the conversation that we all have. But yeah, I mean, I've found that, I haven't found anybody who's had a hard time accepting it or understanding it. But if I did, I have a feeling that those people who do have a hard time with it or do have a negative reaction to it probably have, other things going on that, I mean, they may not be in a good place as you are. So,
well, and isn't that such a confidence booster too, though, when like so many people either don't react or react well? Like, I feel like that makes the people who are not reacting well really sort of stand out. But like when I'm in public, if I see someone staring, I always try to remind myself to look at the rest of the room and realize that like 99% of the people there are not staring. And it really like solidifies in my mind that it's not really something to do with me. That's them just being rude,
Yeah.
And so then like I don't have to lose confidence over their behavior. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you don't need to win them over. I mean, those aren't the people that should be much of your priority. It's the people who are loving and accepting are the ones who matter.
But sometimes I think like people make a judgment about me in public that like I'm not intelligent or aware, and so I think for some people the issue is that they don't know that I'm aware of them staring at me.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think looking at them back, I don't know, I see that as like part of my activism a little bit, because it reminds people, I think, that they can't just like be that way to disabled people in public and just get away with it as if it's like nothing.
Yeah. And that's something I was worried about too. Even with people who have known me for a number of years, once I started to tell them that, I was worried that, they would look back at our past experiences and see things in there that like, okay, yeah, maybe he's not quite as there as I thought he was, or this explains that. But there is that really quick judgment that can sometimes exist with that, where it's either, if you say neurological disorder, people maybe quickly slide that into maybe an intellectual disability, or...
Well, think about this. What if you did have an intellectual disability? It still wouldn't warrant that kind of treatment, right?
Totally. So absolutely.
It's like even if it was some sort of mental illness or something to do with your intelligence, like that still doesn't excuse it.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah. But like it doesn't have to do with your character. So,
right. And I think
I always think about that.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were saying too, just about the sort of your self-presentation, and if someone appears to have a question about it, then you kind of step forward and then you set the tone and you come off how you come off, which is obviously someone that nobody should have any problem with ever. And that's I mean that's how you do it.
I always think about that too, because they're like, you hear things about like people with mental illnesses, or like people gawk at like people, say, talking on the street to themselves. And it's kind of interesting how that's been flipped, because sometimes I'll be walking down the street and I have a lot of complex vocal tics. So I am now that person walking down the street talking to myself. And like, I think some people judge me as having a mental illness, but I'm like, wait, but you shouldn't stare at the people that have mental illnesses either. It's not like they had like
I mean,
like the position that they're in.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like we as people spend a lot of energy kind of separating ourselves from things that may be seen as lesser than, or I mean,
We're
it's
not
just
those disabled people.
Yeah, exactly. So I have Tourette's syndrome, but I don't do this, or I have Tourette's syndrome, but I don't curse, or it's just there's so much effort and emphasis placed on. I have this this issue, but I'm okay, versus just kind of explaining what it is and what you go through, and explaining that everybody has a million different things going on, and I've got my thing going on. It's not getting in the way. Like, who cares? And I'm proud of what I have. Sure. It's made me the kind of person I am, and I'm not doing evil with it. It's what I got. I can't help it.
Yeah, it's actually taken me a long time to like sort of make that journey and like stop, separating myself from other disabled people. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of that comes from like, because when I was in school, I was kind of different and awkward, and I had really awful coordination, and so kids would call me like the R word or retarded a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for a long time I wanted nothing to do with anyone who had an intellectual disability or looked like they did. But now I think I realize that was really a misguided way of going about that. But I think there should be more unity within the disability community, like for like everyone with a disability. Like, we shouldn't be saying like, oh, I have Tourette's, but it doesn't affect my intelligence, so it's okay. Because there are people with intellectual disabilities with Tourette's too. Mm-hmm. Like, what are they supposed to say?
Right. So,
it's been a long journey. Also, any of us could get an intellectual disability at any time, either through disease or injury. So I'm not sure we should be tying any of our worth to our particular IQ at any given moment.
That is 1,000,000,000% true. I mean, that is. I love the perspective that you're bringing to this, because it puts. So I get a lot of emails about, how do I do this? How do I explain it to my son's teachers and that sort of thing. I mean, it's just, I feel like there's so many takeaways from this episode so far, and just how simply you're putting things. And I think there's a greater takeaway too, in just being straightforward. I mean, if you combine being straightforward and honest with actually just being a good person, I don't really know where the fault is. I can't poke any holes in that whatsoever. And so when it comes to explaining what we go through and have it be effective without it sounding, whiny or victimizing or anything like that. I mean, it's just, it's a great equalizer.
Just to be clear. I do have days. It's kind of funny because some people who consider themselves to have mild Tourette's will be like, oh, I know I don't have Tourette's like you and stuff, but like honestly, like there's some quote unquote mild tics that get on my nerves. I'll just be sitting there like, why is my eye twitching so much? Oh my God.
I do that too. Yeah. Yeah, I got the tics I get really mad at.
Those. And I have tics way worse than that. So.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's kind of like the paper cut thing, where it's like somehow that hurts worse than like a more serious injury. It's just that's the one you curse over more when it happens, and like
I know,
but
it doesn't make any sense. Like I could be going down the street with like my limbs flailing everywhere, and I'll just be like, I keep rolling my eyes. Dang it! So annoying.
Man. Yeah, that's funny. Since
depends on my mood a lot too. There will be some days where I'll like be ticking with my entire body, but it's like not getting in the way of anything, and so I'll be fine. And then the next day I'll just have like some like head nods mostly, and I'll be so annoyed with it. But
do you have ways of alleviating any of the tics that bother you, like outside of medication?
Yes. So I'm not on any medication actually right now, just because they all make me tired and depressed, and those are two problems that I already have.
Right. Yeah.
I did do Seabid. That's what's the first word? Is it comprehensive? I think it's comprehensive.
I think it's comprehensive. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Behavioral intervention for tics. So for me, it sort of expanded on skills that I already had, but it was the best thing that I ever did for my tics. that's how I got rid of most of my, like, self-harming tics. So I used to be, like, head to toe covered in bruises because I was, like, hitting myself all the time. So it helped me get rid of that. Obviously, I still have very severe Tourettes, and I do have tics that get in the way and bother me a lot. But there are a lot of my tics that are responsive to that. So basically, like, they give you what they call a competing exercise to do in place of a tic, so that, like, you can't do the tic. It's different than, like, just holding it back. Like, you're still holding it back, but you've got something else to do with that, like, particular body part or whatever. So, like, say you wanted to clap. Like, if you just, like, hold your hands together, you can't really clap, and you're holding it back, but you've got, like, something else to do. And you're supposed to try to do that either for as long as you can, or sometimes a minute, or sometimes I just do it until, like, the feeling goes away. So, like, a lot of the times, if you can do that for a long time, the urge does sort of dissipate. This doesn't work with all of my tics, unfortunately, because my tics work differently. So, it's only some of my tics, but it's nice to know that there's another, I think, like, there's something that I can do about some of them, or that I could try that might help. Or even if the tic doesn't go away, I might be able to, like, stop it until, like, there's a better time to do it. So, I mean, I'm not covered head to toe in bruises anymore, so it definitely helps. But yeah, it's not a cure. It's another method that you can use. It's another tool in your toolbox.
And you mentioned the hand clapping example for people who are bothered by their own vocal tics. Is there application there too?
Yeah. So for vocal tics, sometimes I'll, like, put my tongue on the roof of my mouth. Or sometimes I even just try to channel my vocal tics into, like, different vocal tics. Like, if I want to be quieter, sometimes I can channel them into, like, more, like, squeaks and clicks. I'll just be like, just keep thinking of the squeaks and clicks, and, you know, I can't do every vocal tic, so it'll go to that. But almost for every tic, you can find, like, something else that you can try to do. It may or may not work, but I would definitely recommend it to anyone who has the resources, just because, like, there's no side effects, really, so, like, it won't do any harm except maybe to your wallet. So if you can afford it, and there's someone around you, and that's if someone's tics are getting really bothersome to them, I would definitely try that first. But just, I don't know, it's so useful if it works.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear, because I'll get emails from people saying, like, I've heard of Seabid. Is it worth pursuing? And I haven't, at least to date, had enough testimonials from people who have gone through it to say yes or no.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't work for everyone. So,
yeah,
you know, keep an open mind. It's not going to, like, cure your Tourette's if you're, like, listening to this. And
right. Yeah. I found the cure.
And like, even tics that are well controlled, sometimes, although GIT is well controlled, like, they might not stop. For some of my tics, I don't get that much of a premonitory urge, or it's too strong, or I, like, don't feel it coming in time. So, if you can't do the competing response beforehand, it's kind of useless if you, you know, can't catch it. So, yeah, it's definitely not anyone's fault if it doesn't work for them. But it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Good.
What haven't we covered? I mean, this has been gold all the way through. I want to make sure that there aren't any questions that I'm failing to ask or anything you had on your mind or that's come up along the way that you want to say.
You know, I will say this sort of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, but I will put it out there that also the rest of the disability community is a good resource to use, even if those people don't have different disabilities from you. But
right.
I've definitely learned a lot, but especially dealing with my disabilities that I knew I had before I knew I had Tourette's. It sort of prepared me in a way to be this severe.
Yeah.
And there's even stuff for my phone. I have a lot of eye closing tics, but I knew because I watched blind YouTubers that there's an accessibility option on your phone where your phone will talk to you and it's accessible without you having to look at it. So there might be things that you learn that you don't expect. And it's also just I find that the community is very positive and uplifting. It taught me everything I needed to know about my rights and what kind of respect I should expect from people, that I'm not lesser because of any of my disabilities. And it gave me so much confidence. So I would just find other people with other disabilities as well. But just because they're such a great resource.
Yeah, confidence is the missing link for so many things. I mean, just whether we're talking disabilities or just any challenge. I mean, confidence is, if you can find that, that's a skeleton key. Especially
with Tourette's, I find a lot of people with Tourette's are not that confident with their tics.
Yeah,
I think that's
true.
Something that I. Maybe not with my tics, but with my other disabilities, cats, struggled to have confidence with a lot of them. And just through reading a bunch of blogs and stuff, it was really instilled in me that, no, you have this stuff, you can explain it this way. This is what your rights are under the ADA. And this is the way that, people should be treating you. And, hearing those stories made it feel like it was possible for people to respect me, even though I had disabilities, and it was possible to get accommodations. And that gave me the confidence to start demanding that from people. So that's when I got accommodations in school and started looking for a diagnosis more. And stopped letting other people's comments about my traits that were disabled get me down, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, that's been I don't know, just so important in my life. I fit into I'm disabled, I'm a woman, I'm Black. I need that online support and reminders a little bit. So, yeah.
I can't thank you enough for how well this whole thing has gone. I mean, we could pack 3 more hours into this. If you have any sort of last thoughts or last words or just anything that you want to put out there, happy to have it.
Just, I don't know, don't let anyone treat you badly. For any reason related to your disability or even quirks and stuff. I don't know. I can't stress that enough. I feel like a lot of disabled people learn to let people walk over them because we see it as a normal thing for people to treat disabled people as less than. It's not normal. Don't treat it like it is. I don't know. Just demand that people treat you like a basic human being, at the very least. That's all.
Thanks for listening. Thanks so much to Jaleesa for starting us off so strongly. Loved it. Let me know your thoughts. What did she say that got you thinking? Email me, tourettespodcast@gmail.com, or hit me up on Twitter, @TourettesPod. Facebook group is going to happen, I promise. Details soon. Best way to leave your feedback for right now is to send me a voice memo recorded on your phone. Just talk it into your phone, email me the file. Again, tourettespodcast@gmail.com. I'll drop that file into the show so we can all listen to it and respond to it. If you have any questions or comments, I do hear from a lot of you, and I'm truly thankful. This is going to be a really great season. So many great conversations ahead, and maybe some new territory as well. Really excited for you to hear it. Subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app. We're doing this every Friday with a new episode. You can also find it at tourettespodcast.libsyn.com. Libsyn is spelled Libsyn. tourettespodcast.libsyn.com. We'll talk to you again soon. This is Ben.